All right, joining me now is Bill Browder, who is the CEO of Hermitage Capital Management, the investor advisor to the Hermitage Fund, which at one time was the largest foreign portfolio investor in Russia. His business was basically stolen by Russian officials. His lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, died in prison after being denied medical care. Hi, Bill, and you can amend that introduction with anything you want.
So he died after being tortured for a year after he exposed Russian government corruption.
So you must feel bittersweet, a vindication of sorts right now, because you've called for tougher sanctions of Putin's Russia for a good decade or so.
There's not a single ounce of sweet in what's going on right now. I just feel bitter. It doesn't really matter whether I was right or wrong. We're in the most horrific, worst case scenario situation that I could have ever imagined. The fact that Putin is killing innocent civilians in Ukraine and basically taking his own teenagers and making them cannon fodder in this fight that nobody has an interest in other than him is just heartbreaking, and it will. The implications are so terrible for everybody in the world. Every democracy, every freedom-loving person has to be heartbroken by this.
Do these sanctions do what's needed? Are they crushing sanctions?
Well, so when we started this whole discussion of sanctions 10 days ago, the first list that came out was on Tuesday of this week, and I would give that first list a 2 out of 10. And then on Thursday, they elevated it to an 8 out of 10. And then on Friday, when they added Putin to the list, we get to 9 out of 10. But there's still a couple things that need to be done. The first thing is that sanctioning Putin is all very good from a symbolic perspective, but he doesn't hold any money in his own name. All the money is held by oligarch trustees. And so we need to sanction those oligarch trustees who are not on any sanctions lists at present. And the second thing we need to do is we need to cut Russia from SWIFT. And at that point, we would be at a 10 out of 10. Now, a lot of people ask me, does that, if we do that, will Putin, stop any further invasion? And the answer is probably not. At this point, he's going to continue. But it's absolutely essential that we raise the cost of what he's doing to an extreme level, because at some point he's going to want to stop the pain. And we don't know when that's going to be and how that's going to be, but you can't make him want to stop the pain if you don't inflict the pain. And so short of actually having a military confrontation with him, the best we can do is come after him economically with as big a weapon as we can come up with.
Let's talk about SWIFT. I mean, Germany now looks like they're going to give some ground on this. Do you think that it's inevitable that, given the fact that there are a lot more people going to die in Ukraine, and I hope I'm absolutely wrong, but there are going to be a lot more people that die in Ukraine. Knowing Putin the way I do, and the way most of us do, I think he's just going to keep going. There's going to be horrific damage in some of these cities. It is not going to end very quickly. Do you think it's inevitable that Russia is just cut out completely of the Western, economic sphere, and that's it? I mean, there is a new iron wall between democracies in the world and free market economies, and Russia will stand alone.
Well, I agree with you about Putin. I know him pretty well. I've actually been involved in a major conflict with him over the last decade, and I've seen how he behaves. He never backs down. He never compromises. He lies at every step of the way, and he doesn't care how bad he looks when he gets involved in the conflict. And so I don't see this going any other way other than more escalation, more heartbreak, and more atrocities. And as that starts to play itself out, he's going to provoke the most serious reactions that anyone can come up with. And SWIFT is definitely at the top of that list. And it's interesting to note that all of the apologists, all of his friends in Europe, people like Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, who always went to bat for him, people like Zeman, the president of the Czech Republic, have all basically thrown in the towel and are now supporting SWIFT, removal from SWIFT. And so it's really, he's kind of lost everybody. He spent 20 years accumulating all these apologists, paid apologists, I should say. And in one fell swoop over a 24-hour period, he lost it all.
Let's say about Putin's view of the world that, to hell with the West, they can all be bought and sold anyway.
Well, that's true, and but that only works if you have one foot in the civilized world, like he had before. He had one foot in the civilized world and one foot in the criminal world, and I saw the foot in the criminal world, but I also saw how he was showing up at the G20 and the Council of Europe and the International Olympic Committee and all this kind of stuff, where he was, he kind of, could speak out of both sides of his mouth. And some people would say, okay, well, he's, just a tough guy, all that, you shouldn't be so hard on him. But now there's nobody who can say that. You can't say that when he's like unprovoked, invaded a neighboring country for no reason other than sort of his own ego.
So some people would say Putin's changed in the last 2 years. He's become more isolated. He's been sitting out at his dacha during the pandemic. His inner circle has shrunk to some pretty extreme and paranoid people. I would guess Bill Browder says he's always been like this, and he's just revealed who he is.
I don't think he's changed at all. I think he's just reacting to circumstance. And his circumstance right now is that he's been in power for 22 years, and people are tired of him. And people's lives have been not improving because of him. And he can't blame it on anybody else. He's got to he owns it. And as time goes on, look, in Belarus, the people rose up 18 months ago after a fake election and nearly got rid of Lukashenko. And it was only with Putin's own intervention that he prevented that. And then like a month ago in Kazakhstan, same thing. He could see the writing on the wall. He understands that, if he hadn't done anything, Alexei Navalny would probably be president of Russia. So what do you do in a situation like that? You start a war, straight out of the dictator's playbook. You start a war, and nobody's going to replace the president in the middle of a war. And so that's what he's banking on, is to stay using this war to stay in power. Nothing has changed about him. He's always been a totally, amoral, psychopathic, murdering criminal. But now he's just murdering more people. And he's doing it for a very specific reason, which is his own narrow, selfish, personal interests.
What do sanctions directly against Putin and, you can throw in Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister there, because nothing is in his name and it's all hidden through his wallets and his proxies. Does it really lead to anything, or is it just symbolic?
It's just symbolic, unless we also sanction the people who hold his money. And there's no mystery about it.
Do we know who they are?
We know who they are. Everybody knows who they are, I should think. The people in the know who they are. People like Alexei Navalny have presented lists to the State Department and the British Foreign Office. I know who they are. Lots of people know who they are, and there's no mystery who they are. It's mostly these billionaire oligarchs, the big ones. And why do they hold his money for him? Because they can do it in plain sight. They're already established as rich people, and so if they have twice as much money and half of it's Putin's, no one's going to ask any questions.
Just sum this up for me, because tomorrow it's going to be, it's evolving, and it's evolving so quickly now. But where do you think overall, big picture, we go with Russia now in the future? And I mean, this is only a chapter, but it's a horrific one.
Well, in my very pessimistic view, Ukraine is just the beginning of what Vladimir Putin is intending to do. This is the equivalent of Hitler taking the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia in 1938. I think that Putin has much grander ambitions than just Ukraine. And if he succeeds in Ukraine, then it gives him the confidence to then test out NATO and to test the theory, would America go to war with Russia to protect Estonia. And he believes that America wouldn't. He's looking back over the last few months and watching how Joe Biden withdrew 3,000 troops from Afghanistan and allowed the country to fall to the Taliban. And he's saying if America doesn't have the appetite to even keep 3,000 troops there in a non-battle situation, how is America going to enter into an armed conflict with Russia over Estonia?
Yeah, and I think that that's some pretty, bad judgment, because Afghanistan is one thing, but Europe is considered everybody's back door or their homes in the West, and I don't think you can apply the same unprincipled principles.
Well, it's not a question of what you think or what I think. It's a question is what Vladimir Putin thinks, and he's looking and he's seeing that Americans don't have appetite for military adventures, and so he's going to create one and see whether we have the appetite or not.
Last question to you. I know you watched, I don't know if you watched the whole thing, but I did, where he sat with his Security Council before they launched the military action in Ukraine, and he which was televised bizarrely, and he went around Lavrov, Dmitry Medvedev, his foreign security head of foreign security service, asking each one to commit to recognizing the Donbass, knowing full well that what the implication of that would be, it would lead to some kind of conflict. Why did he do that? And I'm really asking you because it's kind of played over and over again in my mind. They all kind of, an analyst told me they all kind of dipped their hand in the blood together. But why did he feel the need to do that?
Well, it's kind of like in the mafia. To become a made man, you have to kill someone so that everybody is bound together by a common crime. And it was just straight out of The Sopranos type of thing, what he did there.
Bill Browder, great to talk to you, Bill. Thank you so much. And, let's hope for somehow Putin puts the brakes on and stops this, but I think we both know he won't.
That's not going to happen. So I'm afraid we're going to see some things that will break our hearts over the next days and weeks.